your testimony, you understand that this call for intifada is to commit genocide against the Jewish people in Israel and globally, correct?
I will say again, that type of hateful speech is personally abhorrent to me.
Do you believe that type of hateful speech is contrary to Harvard's code of conduct, or is it allowed at Harvard?
It is at odds with the values of Harvard.
Can you
But
not
our
say here that it
values
is against the
also-
code of conduct at Harvard?
We embrace a commitment to free expression, even of views that are objectionable, offensive, hateful. It's when that speech crosses into conduct that violates our policies against bullying, harassment,
Does that speech not cross that barrier? Does that speech not call for the genocide of Jews and the elimination of Israel?
When
You
that speech-
testify that you understand that is the definition of intifada. Is that speech according to the code of conduct or not?
We embrace a commitment to free expression and give a wide berth to free expression, even of views that are objectionable.
You and I both know that's not.
Welcome to the National Newspaper Publicists Association's Let It Be Known, and that is Claudine Gay. You lose all credibility. Let me start there. Talking about Representative Stefanik, or whatever you want to call her right there. When this is what you go after so hardcore, this woman's job, that is, and she's apparently reading or responding the way it's written at Harvard. But this is what you go after so viciously, so nasty. Stefanik, she's a nasty person, to borrow Trump's words anyway. Nasty woman. But at the same time, you defend the criminals, the murderers, and I say murderers because 5 law enforcement officers died as a result of them storming the Capitol. And you defend that and go as far as to support the clown that's the House Speaker, the puppet, the whatever you want to call him. Now I'm sounding like Barrington, calling these public officials nasty and clowns. But you go after them, but the murderers, because again, 5 law enforcement officers lost their lives as a result of the riot, worse than anything you've ever seen Black Lives Matter or any other group, civil rights groups do. In fact, they never do. They march in peace. They protest in peace. But these criminals, these dastardly criminals, storm the Capitol, destroy what you guys embrace as American democracy, commit treason, and you and your kind say, let's blur their faces so the Department of Justice can't prosecute them when we show the video of them storming the Capitol. So this is what you do. And a lot more on Claudine Gay this morning, because they have also done something that is just despicable in what they have now alleging that she's done. And it's absolutely despicable, and that not only do they want to take her job away from her, they want to destroy her and make sure that she's unemployable. I'll tell you about that if you don't already know. The special counsel is asking the Supreme Court to decide. And here's where it's going to get really interesting. Jack Smith has asked the Supreme Court to decide if Donald Trump, the twice impeached, 4 times indicted former president, who earlier this year was found by a civil jury to have sexually assaulted a woman in order to pay her $5 million. He's going to find out if Trump can be tried as a former president, because he's raised that specter that presidents have immunity. And so Jack Smith is calling it out for what he believes it is. It's a ploy to delay the March 4th trial. And so he wants the Supreme Court to rule now so it doesn't go through that appeals process that could take months and years. Now, here's a quick thought before we even get to that. You know who appointed most of those judges on the Supreme Court that sit on the Supreme Court right now? Yeah, you guessed it. You guessed it. Trump himself. Also, this morning, we're going to talk about a $70 million a year baseball player. Yep. The Dodgers signed Shohei Ohtani to the most lucrative deal in sports history. 10-year contract worth a mind-boggling $700 million guaranteed. And there's even more to that. We'll tell you about, but my problem, I'm going to tell you about my problem. It's a Taylor Swift-sized problem that I have with this contract and what people are saying about this contract. We'll talk about that. Start spreading the bad news in my home city, the Big Apple. If you live and work in New York, it just got a whole lot more expensive if you drive to your place of employment. We'll tell you about that this morning as well. And Texas and 36 other states. You probably did not know this. And I say you probably didn't know it because I didn't know it. And if I didn't know it, I hope you didn't know it because I should have told you. Does that make any sense? Texas and 36 other states have a special law on the books that's going to cost you your job, your education, your valuables, perhaps your home, if you protest against Israel. We're going to tell you about that law. And firefighters. Did firefighters in the civil rights era make sure that burning buildings that had Black people inside, including children, let the structure burn and let them die? Well, some bombshell allegations have surfaced over the last few days, including a video of a young man discussing a conversation he had with a firefighter from that era. Going to bring you that. But first up, Auntie is watching this morning. I got to call out Auntie this morning. I was thinking about Grandma, so I got to call out Auntie. Aunt Pam is watching. So does that mean I got to behave? Claudine Gay. More than 700 members of Harvard University's faculty have signed a letter urging administrators to resist calls to remove the school's president amid an outcry over testimony she gave, as you saw already. The students don't want her gun. Big fight, right? And so these aggressors against her, whether you agree with Harvard's policy or not, now she's the president. She has to uphold whatever policy it is. And she spoke about it. She answered the questions. She did everything to not inject her own opinion in that testimony, which I thought was really, really important. Because you don't want to get caught up in this. And she was trying to, and she did. She stuck to the Harvard policy. Now, whether or not she has the ability single-handedly to change that policy, I don't think so. I think she has to go to a board or whatever to have any. But she also said, and she did actually issue a little bit of a personal statement on it. She said, personally, I think it is abhorrent. So she did give this Stefanik what she was hoping to hear. She denounced she denounced anti-Semitism. But now, since because it's the Stefanik, the other two university presidents apparently stepped down. They resigned amid all Stefanik's setup. And this, believe me, it was a setup. It was a setup. It was a lynching that happened in the U.S. House of Representatives. And Danielle Pierre, I don't know if she's from Harvard, but she says, I don't want Dr. Gay removed either. Let her lead. They need to leave Black women alone. And look, they do. And if they do something wrong, yeah, then you go after them, right? But she denounced anti-Semitism personally, but she simply read, and there's a fine line that she was trying to point out, apparently, with free speech, which, if anybody, listen, Greer, what is that paper that Barrington wrote that story for? You got to go check out that story, by the way. I'm going to mention it. You got to check it out, because free speech is about to be over too. It's called the Florida Phoenix, floridaphoenix.com. And the headline on Barrington's story is Project 2025, if allowed, will cement America as a right-wing authoritarian state. And it goes along, and there it is. It goes along with what I'm saying about what Claudine Gay was kind of going at. And they say it depends on context. It's free speech. She can't muzzle these students. And students today, they're not going to be muzzled. They're not going to be muzzled. They're as vociferous in their beliefs as folks were back in the civil rights movement. That's the one thing about these students. It was the students who got Barack Obama elected. It was the students who just a couple of years ago at Howard University that got that mess cleaned up. But nonetheless, now they're coming at, okay, the students want to keep her, faculty wants to keep her. They have leveled the most ugly charges. It's like okay, I won't make that comparison because I would have to explain it, and it might take me a while to explain it. But the most dastardly charge you can level against someone in her position and a journalist is plagiarism. Now they claim that she's plagiarized something. Now, she went to Harvard years and years and years and years ago. And now they're saying all of a sudden they just did some digging and found out that she plagiarized a paper. Plagiarism comes with a death sentence as far as your career is concerned. So they want her gone. And the thing that she's alleged to have done, and it's a particularly now, I know this happened a long time ago, but particularly nowadays, it's an easily made error. She repeated a graph or a sentence or something that somebody else had said or written, and her attribution was off. Maybe she didn't put the proper attribution. Maybe she just forgot to close it off. Power 96 is sending me a cryptic note. He said the most disrespected and the most investigated person in a leadership position is a Black woman. He said, read his first. So I had to go scroll back. And it's good to see the faculty rally around Claudine Gay. And these are the people, that paper in question, these are the same people who accepted that paper. And believe me, 20, 30 years ago, they had mechanisms in place to easily detect plagiarism. Yes, it is absurd. Now, we didn't come on here to defend Claudine Gay, to say she should or shouldn't keep a job or whatever. That's up to whoever's going to make that decision. But to have her and those other two lynched in the United States Congress is absolutely, that's abhorrent. That is abhorrent. And then we mentioned this the other day about the glass house with all the cracks in the window, and it's like 40 degrees below zero, and the window's freezing, and you throwing rocks from that glass house when the person across the street got bricks. That's what that was all about. And I'm not too sure that Claudine Gay has some. It lives in a glass house because they come up with stuff when they want to get you. Folks like a Stefanik, folks like a Mike Johnson. Look at the former speaker. He don't even have a job anymore. When they want you, and look who brought him down. Of all people, Matt Gaetz, who's been investigated for so many crimes, some dastardly crimes. I keep using that word dastardly. I keep thinking like Courageous Cat or something. Oh gosh. Turning our attention now to Washington, D.C. The special counsel, Jack Smith, has formally requested that the U.S. Supreme Court expedite a crucial decision. Yes, it is crucial as to whether Donald Trump can be prosecuted. Federal judge has already ruled the case can go forward, but Trump is asking federal appeals court to reverse that. And Jack Smith was like, hold up. We know where this is leading. This is going to lead to months and months, maybe even years of appeals before the appeals court gets. So let's just cut to the chase and go right to the U.S. High Court. Because he's also, Trump is claiming double jeopardy as well. That since he's saying that he was brought on trial by the Senate, talking about his 2 impeachment, and each time the Senate, the favorable Senate, the Republican-led Senate, did not convict him. So he's claiming double jeopardy, which, I never got one law school credit, never went to law school, but it's just that in itself sounds sketchy. It's a whole different, it was not a criminal proceeding. He was in no jeopardy of going to jail had the Senate impeached him, agreed with the House to impeach him. Austin says even Kevin in Home Alone has a job, but not Kevin McCarthy. But the Supreme Court, this is going to mark the first time, if they even take the case, it's going to make the first time that the nation's highest court will weigh in on the extraordinary prosecution of a former president. But there's precedent. There is absolute precedent for this, which is what Jack Smith pointed out. Because if you recall back in, was it 1972, 1973, or whenever Nixon said he was not a crook, 1974, the Supreme Court immediately rejected Nixon's claims of presidential privilege. He was done. He was out of office. And Trump's point was he was in office when these alleged crimes took place. And which is true. January 6th took place while he was still in power. He only had like a week or so to go. But here's the problem, folks. Without me telling you, you know the problem. You know the problem. And Power 96 says Trump talks all of that junk on social media and on camera, but when it's time to get on the witness stand, he is quiet as a church mouse. Yeah, he refused to testify this week in his fraud trial, $250 million fraud trial, in which the judge has already ruled that his business committed massive business fraud, financial crimes in that case, civilly he's ruled. And they're just trying to determine if he's going to have to pay $250 million in fines and if his business will be prohibited from doing business in New York. So that's what's going on. Reed Barrington's, see all of this, to get a really good perspective, Reed Barrington Salmon's expose that he did in the Florida Phoenix FloridaPhoenix.com is what I said, right? Yeah. Read it. Compelling read. It's probably about a 5-minute read, but it's worth it. And I think you will get the picture if you read that. I am going to the link is in the chat. It is. The link to the article has been placed. See, Greer's all over things. It's been placed in the chat. Project 25, FloridaPhoenix.com. Now I'm going to go on a Taylor Swift size rant, unless somebody stops me. I said Aunt Pam was watching, so she might stop me. Someone once wrote about Ricky Henderson, who's the greatest, the absolute hands down greatest leadoff hitter in the history of the world. Somebody wrote about him. If you could split him in two, you'd have 2 Hall of Famers. Now they claim that line applies even better to, there's one writer who claims it applies even better to Shoei Ohtani, the baseball star who just signed a unreal $700 million deal with the Dodgers. My wife would always say, these players get paid too much money. And that's when they were making like $5, $6, $10 million a year. I don't know that she did. Oh yeah. I'm sure I've ranted around the house about the $700 million. So she knows he's getting $700 million. So she's probably going to bar me from going to games now. See, and so here's the thing with that. So they holler and scream about Shohei being the greatest player ever. That's a load of you know what. He's played 6 years in the major leagues. And just to give you an idea, first and foremost, before him, and I'm going to go somewhere where y'all might expect me to go on this, because we talked about wherever there is a Beyonce, there's a Taylor Swift, a much less talented Taylor Swift, that they got to make her the greatest. And we know why. Now he plays his first 6 seasons. And he's, according to these baseball writers who should not, 1000% should not be voting on Hall of Fames and award, postseason awards, whatever. That's the setup. Because when they mad at you, right, you lose out on awards that enhances your value. And I always go back to Darryl Strawberry in 1988. Hands down, the National League's most valuable player did not win it. They gave it to Kirk Gibson, who was half the player, half the man Darryl Strawberry was. And Shohei had 44 home runs this past season, and despite missing a month. And of course, he pitched too. Now, here's the thing. And he pitched as well. He's a good pitcher. He's an excellent hitter. But here's the thing. He's not going to be able to pitch for at least a year and a half, if not more, if not ever, because he had a second, what they call Tommy John surgery, which may affect his offensive performance. But his 44 home runs, despite, and I give it to, had he played the full season, he would probably hit 50 home runs. Okay, so what? So what? That 40 plus home run hitters are a dime a dozen. Doesn't make him great. He played his first 6 seasons. He left the Angels now to go sign with the Dodgers. He'll start playing with the Dodgers. Played his first 6 seasons with what these writers consider the best baseball player until he came along, Mike Trout, who is getting paid. His contract is worth $420 million. They never even made the playoffs. Give me a break. Best ever? No. Y'all, see, a lot of people, I know we talk a lot of times to a much younger audience, so I'm going to throw out the name Bo Jackson. But I already mentioned Ricky Henderson. I would take Ricky Henderson in a heartbeat over Shohei Ohtani. Change games, single-handedly change games, whatever. Bo Jackson. Let's Shohei Ohtani put on some football pads and see just how far he'd go. Bo Jackson dominated baseball and football at the same time. But Don't even let me invoke the name Barry Lamar Bonds. Simply the best, even before, and again, the steroids, okay. But the steroids, even those who say he took steroids, agree that he started taking them like 10 years into his career. The first 9 years of Barry Bonds, nobody can stand up to. And then let's throw Barry out because y'all say, oh, he took steroids, he cheated, which is false. Steroids didn't give him hand-eye coordination the way, I mean, he had the best hand-eye coordination in the history of the sport. That's you can't argue with. But let's go to the greatness of Willie Mays. Let's go to the greatness of Hank Aaron. This is why you have people, oh no, Babe Ruth. Babe Ruth, oh no, Shoei Ohtani. You know why they built him up like that. And then $700 million. And then here's the thing. And I don't have a problem with the Dodgers as an organization. Dodgers, in fact, a lot of black folks from New York love the Dodgers because Branch Rickey, when they were the Brooklyn Dodgers, of course, brought Jackie Robinson into the major leagues. But then when you break it down, after a couple of days after the announcement of the contract, they did something also unprecedented. They deferred. So they deferred $680 million of that $700 million. So he's going to make for the next 10 years $2 million a year. So it doesn't bother him because because they boosted him up so much, he in marketing deals, whatever, he makes something like 80-90 million a year anyway. But from 2023 to 2034, he will get $68 million from the Dodgers after his contract is up. For 10 years, he's going to get $68 million a year, which is circumventing their soft salary cap that they have. Then they also mentioned, it gets around the luxury tax or whatever. Teams that spend over a certain amount have to pay other teams a luxury tax, which is absurd. When you get, to me, the teams like the Oakland A's and whomever else who have like $40 million payrolls should be paying a luxury tax, not the teams that spend. And I'm just surprised that the Players Association goes for this. This is the strongest union in the history of unions. It's the Major League Baseball's Players Association. I'm surprised. And they've been weakened of late. I mean, they've been stronger than the Teamsters by far. I'm surprised they go for this. And then here's these writers. In Ohtani's rookie season, he only made the league minimum. You're supposed to so he made the league minimum in his rookie season, which means that he was well ahead of every other rookie. And now in his 7th season, he's going to make a new maximum. But give me a break. Aaron Judge gets up there and hits 60 home runs. Make it plain. Mark Thompson tell you about Aaron Judge. And Aaron Judge hits 300. Shoei's lifetime batting average is 271. He's not better than Ricky Henderson, Barry Bonds, Ken Griffey Jr. Certainly not better than Willie Mays and Hank Aaron. Give me a break. And you remember when Mays and Aaron were doing the greatness? Oh, no, they're not the greatest. Mantle and DiMaggio and Ruth. Yeah, right. Black folks came into that sport in 1947. Came into Major League Baseball, I should say. Ohtani's career batting average is 274. 274, which today's standards, it's a really good average. Today's standards. 10 years ago, 15 years ago, that was considered okay. 274, we can live with that. He has, so far in his career, 171 home runs, 437 RBIs. Pitching, he's 38-19 over his career with a 3.01 ERA. Bonds' first 6 years, 160 home runs, 508 RBIs, 283 batting average. For Mays' career, Willie the Great, he hit 301 with 660 home runs, over 1,900 RBIs. Hank Aaron, 755 home runs, 305 batting average, 2,300 RBIs. $700 million? I think not. Monique Daniel says, not to get you on a rampage, but Taylor Swift gave $1 million to Tennessee for towns ravaged by the tornadoes, hence the popularity. $1 million? She made $1 billion just on the tour alone. How come she didn't give him $100 million? She could never. See, and then why she got to announce it? Why she got to announce it? Don't get me started. What do y'all see in Taylor Swift? Oh, let's swiftly move on. How about that? Because I'm really upset about New York, too. New York, first of all, it's Power 96. Speaking of New York, the Knicks won last night. Just want you to know. Just want you to know. The prospect of, and the Rangers won the other night, too, breaking a 2-game losing streak. The prospect of congestion prices coming to New York City just got a lot more real. The MTA, the Metropolitan Transportation Authority, overwhelmingly voted to approve the measure. It says will contribute millions of dollars for the city's aging transit system and cut down on traffic by charging drivers to enter a large swath of Manhattan up to $23 a day. It's outrageous. And Governor Hochul, she's laughing and smiling and championing this thing like it's the greatest thing ever. Talking about the trains, infrastructure, and the buses and everything's gonna now. We need the money. They've been saying that. I'm a New Yorker. I'm something years old. Y'all know how old I am, and they've been saying it all my life that they need to. And it's not like they've never had the money to do it. They just don't do it, and they'll get this money. They won't use it for that. But more to the point, though, could you imagine living in New York where the taxes are almost as bad as New Jersey, where everything costs rent? The average 1-bedroom in Manhattan is like $4,000 a month. That's not an exaggeration. Even in Queens and the outer boroughs, for a 1-bedroom, you're paying like $2,000 or more. And they want to charge people $23, $15 to $23 to drive into the city. And when you drive into the city, folks, you got to pay for the gas, of course, which in New York is average about $3.50 a gallon. But you also got to pay for parking, which average between $30 and $40 if you are fortunate on the low end. So you're paying like $100 a day to go to work. That is absolutely absurd. And for the governor to be celebrating this like it's a big win, she's out of her mind. Governor Hochul was out of her mind. Boy, oh boy. See, it's stuff like that that make people say, see, Cuomo's got to come back. And when you act like that, we know what he did or alleged to have done, but we got to bring him back. She's disgraced in the office. It's just, and this also, it says people who drive during the week between 9 p.m. and 5 a.m. and on weekends between 9 p.m. and 9 a.m. will still be charged. They'll get a discount though. So even off hours, they're going to charge you. They estimate that at least 140,000 motorists will be affected by this. It's absolutely absurd. I go into that's why get on the Excella, first class, and go into Penn Station, which is the Moynihan station now. Yep, Monique. Then you said New York is a mess. Not the New York City we grew up in anymore. People everywhere, living in every nook and cranny. It's exactly right. And this is what she's celebrating, the governor is celebrating. How about building some more affordable homes and celebrate that? I said some more. They don't have any affordable homes. How about building some affordable homes? And I'm not talking about the projects. New York is atrocious right now, the way it's being run. And then you got Mr. Policeman Adams running, as mayor, and now he's got sexual assault allegations against him to go on top of other things that he is doing wrong. It's a complete mess. What are you doing to my city? At least that unmitigated disaster from the early 80s, Ed Koch, at least he walked around the city trying to get the pulse of the city. Remember his famous line, for those who knew, "How am I doing?" That was his favorite line. "How am I doing?" He had the ball that he looked like the Ronald McDonald guy. Ed Koch and Ronald McDonald, we always thought they were related. How am I doing? I don't see Eric Adams asking folks, how am I doing? He don't want to hear it because he don't want the truth. He can't handle the truth. Good night. See, these are supposed to be like news broadcasts, news topics or whatever. It just makes some of this stuff, it's like you want to take somebody in the room. What are you doing? Just wake them up. So I learned something new. And maybe you learned something new today too. Because I was seeing a story about Texas and how you can't protest against the government of Israel in Texas. Then I said, well, let me look at that. And found that 37 states have laws that prohibit you from protesting against Israel. You can protest against just about any other nation, any cause. You can protest against the U.S. government, but you can't protest in 37 states legally against Israel. It was called the Boycott, Divest from, and Sanction Israel movement is what they described it as. BDS for short. And I found it to be amazing, as some have began to wonder. And we was in Washington last week, and by the White House, huge protest, huge protest. Couldn't even get to the hotel, not by car anyway. You had to park in a lot somewhere, which don't like, and then walk over. Don't like. Reminds me of when Austin had me walk 10 miles in the hot sun a couple of weeks ago. It was 115 degrees in Washington, and I had to go and meet him at a community center. Nonetheless, this came to light as some had wondered what they might be able to do to encourage a ceasefire and help Palestinians facing the ground invasion by Israel on a very crowded Gaza Strip. And a Pew survey found that about 84% of Americans had little to no awareness of this 2-decade campaign, BDS, because it's against the law in most states. You can go to jail. You can lose your job. They can take your scholarships away, kick you out of school if you are found to protest against Israel. You can protest against, like I said, the U.S. government. You can protest against, the Chinese government. You can protest against Palestine. And so they broke it down at its simplest form, this BDS movement, it's described, I should say, as a global nonviolent protest movement. It attempts to use economics and cultural boycotts against Israel, financial divestment from the state, and government sanctions to pressure Israel's government to abide by international law and end its controversial policies toward Palestinians, policies that supposedly described by human rights experts as apartheid. And so the pro BDS people say it's a tactic, not an organization. So disparate groups take up their own campaigns that focus on a slightly different set of targets, despite, of course, they say sharing a moral ground and tactics of peaceful resistance. They say the movement did take its inspiration from the South African anti-apartheid fight and the U.S. civil rights movement, because it was all about boycotts and nonviolence. Dr. King, of course, was nonviolent. And it even mentions that Desmond Tutu, the Archbishop, was a quote unquote spirited defender of the BDS movement. It's and people still protest the amount of money that the U.S. government sends to Israel. Latest unofficially that we have is that the U.S. has sent 158 billion in aid to date. And this is, like I said, unofficially, but it is according to the Congressional Research Service report. And of course, the Biden administration is proposing a $106 billion foreign aid package that includes $14 billion for Israel. So folks don't know which way to turn on this. And they do know that it is criminal now in 37 states to protest against the state of Israel. In fact, just to underscore it, in 2017, 43 U.S. senators proposed, it didn't go anywhere, proposed a bill backed by the American Israel Public Affairs Committee that would criminalize supporting BDS with a punishment of up to 20 years in prison if you are supporting BDS or protesting against Israel. Up to 20 years in prison. In fact, Little Marco in 2019, Senator Rubio, introduced a bill that would make it safer for states to impose their own anti-BDS laws. Now, again, those did not make it through Congress, but Rubio reintroduced his bill this year. So it's really interesting, really interesting how that works. And again, I'm going to be clear, because maybe I'm going to be clear. We're not taking sides here, just telling you what's going on there. And news, we're not supposed to take sides, right? Journalists, we're supposed to give you the news, let you digest it and let you decide what you're going to do with it. And Power 96 says Israel is literally kicking out Black people that have lived in their country for decades and generations. See, that's the first I've heard of that. All right. So grab your popcorn for this real life horror story that I'm about to tell you. What began as a typical trip to Denny's turned into an eerie honesty hour for a Black truck driver when an elderly white ex-firefighter made a confession. But the older man regrets were not only racist, chilling and deadly. Shamar Elion is the guy's name that took the TikTok app. He took to TikTok to share his interaction with an 89-year-old white man who was celebrating his birthday. He said he took a pit stop from truck driving to run into a Denny's and sat down to eat across from this man's birthday party. After all of the guests had left, Shamar said he went over to the man to share birthday wishes. He says, "Happy birthday, young man, 89." He knew he was 89 because they had the thing on the table say he was 89. He said, that's a lot of memory to have. So the man responds by saying, "Thank you. There are way too many things that I wish I could forget," is what the man told him. And he was like, "What do you mean?" But nothing, I mean, nothing could have prepared this young black man for what was going to happen next. They began to talk about this man's 89 years of life. And he said, "Well, you said you regret some things and that you wish you could forget." The man said, "You have no idea." And boy, oh boy, uh, Elion, the black guy, certainly did not have any idea. He told him he used to be a firefighter in the 1960s and 1970s. And he described it as a, quote, very different time. He then said that it was very common in those days for firefighters who looked like him, white, to lead people that looked like him, black, in burning houses and write it off as not being able to get to them. He then recalled actually being among those firefighters, hearing the screams of black people and children left in houses that they refused to help rescue. He said that there were times that they were in cars, they could get them out, but they let them burn. They were in stores that were set ablaze, but they let them burn. The old man told him that his last straw came when he was serving in the department, and it came time to save a little baby. Despite making eye contact with the baby, he pretended as if he was going to save the baby and left that baby to burn. He said he quit the fire department because of that. And now he says he's suffering. He's still every day, he suffers nightmares and hasn't forgotten what he's done. My little sister, Dr. Nicole, says it. She's not surprised it happened. She's sure it happened a lot. Only surprised is that he admitted it. Yeah, he says his conscience is killing him. Then go turn yourself in, 89 or not. Just like the lady who got Emmett Till killed before she died. She should have died in prison. And this young black man was like, man, he was shook. He said that he realized that racism wasn't just exclusive to crooked cops or lawyers or judges, because you didn't think about firefighters. And that video came, right? It's just a year after in Flint, Michigan, last year. She sued the city and the fire department for the same claim, leaving her 2 black boys for dead in a fire. It was 2 white firefighters, according to the Daily Beast, left the boys inside a burning home and lied about clearing the room that they were stuck in. Each of the firefighters involved resigned. And in New York, we talking about New York, Governor Hochul and General Adams over there, in New York, this firefighter, Kareem Charles, right? When he was a cadet at the academy, and they gave him a racist nickname. And he said he's going to let it slide. He chose not to escalate the issue. Other black firefighters had warned him that speaking up about racism went against the culture of the New York City Fire Department. But then George Floyd was killed, and the protest happened, which, again, read Barrington's article, because they're going to outlaw your protest when stuff like that happens too. He said that the culture inside New York's firehouses deteriorated even more beyond repair, he said. Charles and other black firefighters just got bore the brunt. White firefighters would share racist messages and memes on their phones. They would mock George Floyd's dying moments. They gloated about how police could, quote, legally shoot black children. Lieutenants discussed turning fire hoses on protesters. And this is what they said why that tactic may or may not work. This is what the racists said. They said wild animals like water. They were disciplined. They were suspended. And a spokesperson for the New York City Fire Department described the punishments as the most severe discipline ever handed down in the history of the department, which rarely terminates. So some of them were fired. They rarely terminate or suspend members for a long period of time. But they still didn't address the deeply rooted racism in the department or do anything to improve the culture. And even the leaders say that, yeah, we let it go. Racism, sexism, harassment. Boy. After several black firefighters saw these racist messages and they launched complaints, the department quietly suspended 9 firefighters without pay. So they suspended 9 firefighters without pay from periods that range from a few days to 6 months. And those that were apparently, there's a couple who were terminated, they were reinstated. One of the firefighters is just going to leave he's going to retire after the suspension concludes because he has enough time to retire. And we know that fire departments have rarely gotten the same level of public scrutiny with respect to racism as police departments. Because the theory was, as faulty as it is, firefighters lack the authority to use deadly force. That was a theory, because what we just brought you, that firefighter from the 1960s and 70s told you, they had deadly force for sure, leaving babies and otherwise black folks in burning cars, stores, homes, structures, whatever. Power 96 says, just like many other old races, they want forgiveness before they kick the bucket. I hope he burns in hell. I said what I said, he said. Yeah. This guy decides to pour out his heart to this black guy because the black guy came over, because he starts the conversation. I mean, he responds initially by saying that there was a time where that black guy would never be able to approach him and talk to him like that. And again, see, the institutional, because look what Dr. Nicole says. She says, if the hospital turned us away back then, why are we surprised by firefighters? Racism was entrenched in the system. So it's right. Hospitals, paramedics, firefighters, police officers, politicians, and y'all gonna argue against reparations? It's a joke. When the slave master himself got reparations. Goodness grief. Somebody said, I still haven't seen that mule, let alone the 40 acres. Good night. It all takes me back once again. I know I'm being a sort of PR person this morning for Barrington, but it takes me back to Barrington's article, Project 25, if allowed, will cement America as a right-wing authoritarian state, is the headline. FloridaPhoenix.com. That's what's ahead. We talked about what's behind and what's really not behind, because it's still happening. You know, you don't want to, they say don't impugn bad motives on anyone. If they did it then, leaving people in burn, and we just saw it, right? Flint, Michigan last year, those firefighters left those 2 black kids in that house to burn, and lied and said, "Oh, we cleared the house," knowing. How do you live with yourself? How do you go to sleep? How do you eat? How do you go to sleep at night? These are the folks that need to just eat the gun. Ooh, that's just bad. I just said that, right? But good Lord, how do you do that? I don't care what race you are. I don't, here's the thing. Even if you had a fight with that person, how do you let somebody, and you couldn't have had a fight with a baby. How do you let a baby burn and pretend that it's not happening? Good. Man has dominated man to his harm. And Greer's right. Firefighters had no problem turning the hose on children in the civil rights movement. Just as much as they turned it on adults, they turned it on children. And you heard that quote, wild animals, right? Boy, oh boy, you got to believe. You got to believe. And all these people say they believe in something. They believe in whether it's God or something. If you believe in a higher power, if you believe in a creator, there's no way that you can think that he is okay with this. And also that he won't eventually do something about it. Let's leave it right there, folks. It is the bottom of the hour. But hang in there, read Barrington's article, and come back tomorrow and write in. Tell us what you thought of Barrington's article, and we will talk to you then. Thanks for watching. Let it be known.